everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be continuing our review of Super Mario Brothers. This is the 30th anniversary box set here, the 1-Up edition, which is the re-release of this set. I talked about the 4K disc, the movie itself, the picture quality, the audio quality, the special features. So if you missed that, definitely watch that. I'll leave a little link up above and at the end of the video. But today, we're going to be focusing on the rest of this absolutely massive box set. You could use this thing as a self-defense weapon. I am dead serious. This is like a brick. So this is one of these box sets that they just went the extra mile. Umbrella Entertainment has done an amazing job of including basically everything you could possibly want to know about this movie on this set. And this movie does have its fans. This is kind of a guilty pleasure movie for me, honestly. Rewatching it now, the movie is an incredible looking film, even though it's a mess in terms of story. Its visual look and set design and everything is outstanding. And, you know, Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo, Dennis Hopper, they did the best they could with this movie, even though it was an absolutely horrible experience for everybody involved. So today we're going to be talking about this third disc here and all the extra stuff that came with it. This is the third disc here. Now, this standard Blu-ray here has a slew of special features on it. And honestly, I think if you were to tally them all together, it's longer than the actual feature film. I'm pretty sure it is. It's kind of nuts, all the stuff that's on this disc. So I'm going to start by talking about that disc and then going through the rest of this set, because this is really impressive stuff and it deserves attention. Now, first and foremost, that third disc contains a work print version. So that work print version was obtained by one of the gentlemen that ran this Super Mario Brothers movie archive website. And it's actually from the personal collection of producer Roland Joffe, who was one of the head producers on this film. I'm going to stop a second here, because if I didn't know this up until watching this 4K disc, that Roland Joffe was one of the producers of this film. If that name sounds familiar, this is the guy who directed The Killing Fields and The Mission. And if you've seen those movies, those are very intense, massive films. I would dare say even maybe historically important films. And this guy, for whatever reason, just wanted to do Super Mario Brothers. It's kind of unbelievable. I guess at the time, it probably should have been a massive moneymaker instead of the huge disappointment at the box office that this movie was. But that work print version, which they call the lasagna cut, which I think is kind of interesting, the lasagna work print, is about 6 minutes longer than the final theatrical version. And it's actually, according to the book that's inside there, it's actually been mastered from 5 layers of transfer materials. So these guys from this website really went the distance to make sure that this movie was watchable and viewable in an okay fashion. And you can watch it in 1080p on that third disc. It does not look great. I'm just going to be honest with you. It is from a VHS tape. It's been cleared up as best as it possibly can be, but it's a 30-year-old VHS tape. And it's an interesting watch. I did watch it for the sake of this review, and I will say that it is a differently paced kind of feeling type of movie than the theatrical cut is. It's similar in tone in a lot of ways. It may actually not be as fast-paced at times, and it does have some pacing issues that were fixed up for the theatrical version. But there are some moments and beats that are restored that kind of enhance the story and, you know, give the characters a little more background, but not much, honestly. I found it to be a fascinating watch, but nothing to the point where I thought this was mind-blowing. It was just interesting to see all the little bits and pieces that were cut out kind of put together. One of the most interesting things about that work print cut is that there are many moments that are missing from that version of the film. There are scenes that are missing. There are shots that are missing because special effects hadn't been done yet. There's a lot of temp music because Alan Silvestri hadn't completed his score yet for that work print version. And my ears kind of were ringing a little bit because there's a lot of Danny Elfman. There's a lot of Danny Elfman scores used in that work print version. I'm pretty sure one of the Batman scores is in there. It could be Dick Tracy. It's one or the other. Pee-wee's Big Adventure is definitely in there. But the one that reoccurred the most that I was very surprised to hear was they used the score from Midnight Run a lot in that work print. And I was so happy to hear that. And it actually kind of works. It actually works kind of well on and off. But again, I'm glad Alan Silvestri stepped in and did his score because his music does work really well in the final product. So it's interesting. As for the unfinished special effects, there's many shots of Mario and Luigi and other characters standing in front of blue screens where they're just in a blue screen set. That was fascinating. But one that actually made me laugh out loud, and I very rarely unintentionally laugh at a movie, but in this situation, it just took me by surprise, was that there was a shot early on in the movie where Princess Daisy is kidnapped by Spike and Iggy, and they go through that wall in the underground cave. And in the final cut of the film, she kind of pokes her head out, and you can kind of see like the outline of her face in the cave wall, and that's a CGI effect. Work print version, it's just a shot of the wall, and you hear Samantha Mathis's voice, and it's just the shot of the wall. It's like a static shot of a wall, and you just hear Luigi, and it's just a wall. And Mario and Luigi are then like reaching out to like a wall, and there's nothing. And at one point, Luigi grabs Daisy's necklace with the meteorite piece on it, and it's like it just comes out of nowhere. It's just nothing there, and he just has it. And it's really funny to see. But again, through the magic of post-production and everything, in the final cut, you actually get everything put together. So really interesting to see that stuff come together in the work print version. But just keep in mind, it's kind of unintentionally hilarious there. And it's an interesting watch, but I wouldn't say it's required viewing. But if you're a fan of this movie, you'll absolutely love seeing that work print. Just keep in mind that the picture quality is not great, and that's just due to its source. In the book, the archivist there from the Super Mario Brothers movie archive, they actually stated that they had thought about putting the extended and deleted scenes that are in the work print around the 4K or high definition transfer of the film, but they actually in the end decided against it so the movie would have one constant look throughout. And I actually highly respect that decision, because other versions of work prints and things I've seen in the past, or different, you know, early edits of film, most of them don't look that great when they do that. And it's kind of jarring when you go back and forth between this really clean, crisp picture and then like this thing that may have been found in like an attic, you know, for like 40 years. It's just sat there. And you can always tell there's like that jump in quality. And sometimes it's all right and sometimes it's not. In this case, I'm glad they kept it all the same all throughout, and it's just a seamless experience from beginning to end. I think that was a really, really good decision, so good for them. As for the audio quality on that work print version, it is a DTS HD 2.0 stereo track. And the audio quality is also not that great. It actually is kind of low at times, but to understand that it was sourced from 5 different passovers from this VHS tape, and they actually did one complete version of it. One of the sources that they used is literally just to match up the audio with the video, because I guess at one point in the VHS tape, the audio and the video became misaligned, which they had to go back and fix themselves in post, like with editing software and post-production. So very interesting, but I'm glad that they did that, because in the end you can actually made it a watchable experience. The next big special feature that was on that disc is a documentary. I'm calling it a documentary, even though they call it a featurette on here. It's not a featurette. It's an hour-long documentary about the actual making of the film, that is all mostly new interviews with the directors, the producers, the set designers, the special effects guys, some of the writers. I mean, they got everybody. John Leguizamo is in it, along with a couple other actors. Sadly, Bob Hoskins and Dennis Hopper passed away years ago, so they're obviously not in there, but they did use some archival interviews that were done many years ago about this film. So interesting stuff there. It's an hour long, and they talk about everything from pre-production, like meeting with Nintendo, and to actually get the explanation from the directors of why the movie was such a nightmare to make, and to hear about how the script was changed at the very last minute with only 10 days of pre-production left. I mean, they were literally building sets and had stuff done. One of the directors, Rocky Morton, had the entire film storyboarded from this other script, and then all of a sudden the studio was like, "You're not making this movie anymore, you're making this movie." What a nightmare that must have been. And it caused issues literally from that moment on. The movie went massively over budget, and it's such a fascinating thing to hear how everybody on the cast and crew had to basically band together to try to salvage this movie. Very, very cool stuff there. I absolutely love that. There are also a slew of other featurettes that came with this set. There's actually 5 others, and they're all around 20-something minutes. There's one that's called The Catabasis, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, The Catabasis of the Lost Girl. And that featurette focuses on the Daisy character. And one thing that all of these featurettes have in common is that they have interviewed big academic names. I mean, people who have PhDs in certain subjects that relate to this, to the characters in this film. And hearing Samantha Mathis talk about how empowering it was to play Daisy, even though she's a damsel in distress, she fights back, and it's a really cool character. And I have to give the makers of the film credit that she gets kidnapped, but like, she ain't hanging around. Like, she springs into action after a certain part in the film. Really cool stuff there. There's also another one called this is a hell of a name, Anarcho Dino Sado Chic, which is about the fashion and costume design of the Dino Hatton characters in the film. That is a really interesting featurette that talks about the costumes and things, and the wild, wild stories that these guys had for the look of this film. There's another featurette called The Hero Moment, which talks a lot about comic book superheroes, and another academic figure, I think he's a professor, talks about the big moment when Mario and Luigi in the film decide to become their superhero counterparts. They put on the overalls that they're known for from the video games and go to work. And it's an interesting thing to hear, you know, these characters being compared to superheroes. But that's the thesis this guy has in there. It's really interesting. There's another featurette that's called De-Evolution's Dystopia and Trusting the Fungus, and that is one of my favorites. That one there talks about the futuristic yet alternate dimension look of the film, the Blade Runner-esque influences that the look of the film has, mainly because the same guy that did Blade Runner did the set design for Super Mario Brothers, and how movies, like movie literacy of audiences have changed over the years, and how like the phrase "trust the fungus" has kind of strangely become a part of the lexicon. I've never heard a lot of people mention it, but whenever I make a reference to this film, people always seem to remember Trust the Fungus. It's an interesting one. That's a great featurette as well. There's also like a 40-minute reunion panel, which kind of brought together a bunch of the cast and crew that was, I think, at a convention, if I'm not correct, in Raleigh. And that's a great little thing to hear the cast and crew talk about their experiences very candidly in front of an audience. There is also another little 5-minute featurette that has a look at the very crazy movie props that were used, the de-evolution guns and the Fry Guy, like flamethrowers and all that crazy stuff. There's that, and there's also a collection of behind-the-scenes interviews, most of them archival from when the film was made. There's also 3 Japanese trailers that are really wild to see. They, again, as I mentioned, the American trailers really didn't seem to know how to market this movie, and the Japanese seem to really focus on the video game aspect of the film, but also tried to separate it from the Nintendo games. So that's an interesting watch there to see how they marketed it. Similar, but yet different. And there's also 10 commercials, and the commercials I actually remember seeing on TV when I was a kid, some of them, but they all, again, were like a hodgepodge of trying to market this movie to different audiences and trying to theme the movie differently. For like every single commercial had like a different kind of theme and music. It was very fascinating to watch. And they also included 2 really hilarious music videos, and these are like fake music videos based on moments in the film, one of them being Toad's like little protest song. It's like an extended version of that, and it seems like they actually got the actor to come back and sing that like extended version of the song, which was fascinating. And then they have another music video which is actually based on a deleted moment from the film, where Iggy and Spike have this like revolution rap moment, and it happens in the nightclub sequence in the film. It's in the work print version, and it's in the deleted scenes. That's an interesting little moment there. They kind of like change the background music to match like a more hip-hop tone. Very fascinating, but again, very silly. And they also included a massive photo gallery as well. So it's a hell of a special features disc. It's kind of like you could almost spend like half a day just watching everything on that disc. So absolutely outstanding there. This box set here also includes a bunch of postcards, almost lobby cards basically, with different photos from the film, some of which I'd never seen before. And then this was interesting. They included a replica of the official Super Mario Brothers movie magazine. And this has a ton of different little tidbit information about the making of the film, some photographs that are really neat looking. And they also have like the original ads for different video games. This really brought me back the LJN movie tie-in video games for Alien 3 and Terminator 2. That these were like marketed towards kids. It's just amazing. This is before like the ESRB was around, so the movies have the games have no rating. It's wild. It even has like an adaptation of the film that goes from pretty much the beginning of the movie kind of all the way to the end, which is really wild. It basically spoils almost the entire film. It has interviews with a bunch of the actors, including one with Fisher Stevens, which is actually a really neat little feature there that they actually got him for this little magazine. I got a real kick out of reading through this. Kind of brought me back to the early 90s with all the ads and everything. The next one up, and this is really a fascinating read, but this actually has the scripts of the film, and reading this, it really makes it apparent how much this movie was changed from the initial version to the one that we got. The book starts off with an interview with Parker Bennett, who is the original screenwriter for the film. And his script, he talks about how they were going for very particular things with that original version of the film. And then the second part of this is that full script by Parker Bennett and Terry Runte. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing his name. After that is done, there is the Super Mario Brothers revised draft by Dick Clement and Ian LaFrenne, and that is what we basically got for the final film. It is very, very different. Both versions of this script are very different from what we got in the final product. There's a glimmer of one script, maybe a little bit of the other on and off with the film, but there are so many differences, and it's deathly apparent that this movie was basically rewritten on the fly, as the directors do mention in the behind-the-scenes documentary, just because they just couldn't do either one of the scripts that they were given. You know, they had the original one basically planned out, but after the studio stepped in and had them change it to this new script, it was obvious that they just couldn't work with that script with everything else that they had already planned for and completed in terms of sets and costumes and everything. So last but certainly not least, contained in this box set is this absolutely massive book here. And this is a 480-page book that's titled This Ain't No Game, which is a collection of behind-the-scenes experiences and art. And this covers pretty much everything you can imagine when it comes to this film. It has a whole section of the pre-production that went into it, a lot of artwork, storyboards, things like that. There are thousands upon thousands of photographs and drawings, paintings. There's even looks at the continuity Polaroids that were taken during the making of this film. And this goes all the way through the release, the different marketing campaigns that this movie had. It even goes into like the merchandising, the restoration of the film that was done, not just the restoration of the 4K, but also of the work print, which I found to be very fascinating, and a bunch of interviews with the cast and crew. So this is just a stupendous read. I mean, if you can just look, I can't go through every single page of this. If I even try to go through all the people that are interviewed, I'd probably be here for days, but this is really, really impressive and the perfect compendium to this set, because whatever you may not have found out in that bonus disc, it's in this book here. It's really, really amazing stuff. So what more can I say about this massive box set for Super Mario Brothers? This is just incredible. Even they put the Goombas in the back with the flamethrowers, as you can see there. That's the back of it. This is just an incredible set. This retails for around $100 right now, and pretty much the only place you can get this is through Umbrella's website. I cannot recommend this enough if you're a fan. The 4K restoration of the theatrical cut is very solid. If you want to hear more thoughts about that, definitely go check out my first part of this review that is just about that. But everything else, the special features, the work print, all the little featurettes and the behind-the-scenes documentary, the scripts, the little compendium collection there. I mean, this is monumental. This is a huge, huge box set for a film that has basically a cult following now. And as I mentioned, it's a guilty pleasure of mine. I don't think we're ever going to need another release of Super Mario Brothers after this. This is pretty much it. If they come out with this thing in 4K with HDR next time, it'll be a hard sell for me, because this has already got so much stuff, and it is a little pricey at $100, but please, whatever you do, do not pay almost $1,000 for the original release of this. There is barely any differential between this and that set. The discs are exactly the same. The box set contents are basically the same. It's really not worth it. But if you're a fan of this film, I highly recommend you go to Umbrella's website and get this before it disappears, because it does not get much better than this in terms of box sets. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who's watched this video. This was a big undertaking. Basically had to spend a few days going through all the contents, watching all the special features and the film itself. This was a big investment of my time. So if you enjoyed this video, please hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel so I can bring you more videos like this. I greatly, greatly appreciate you watching. And until next time, please stay safe, keep collecting, and take it easy.